Hey there, everybody, it's Rush from Path Less Pelled, and today we've got a really interesting video. We're going to talk with our friend Tony from Breadwinner Cycles. As you know, their G Road won the most coveted prize in all the bike industry, the Supplest Bike of the Year award. So I'm going to nerd out with Tony, talk about his design philosophy, some granular things about angles and materials, and also some of your questions that you guys asked on Instagram. So Tony, thanks for being on our YouTube channel.
Thanks for having me, and thank you for the most prestigious award in the bike industry.
So has it completely revolutionized your shop getting the most prestigious award in all of the bike industry?
Yeah, all we make are G Roads now. Yeah, it's over. It's over for everything else.
Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty interesting. That last year I got to ride 25 bikes, and I really didn't want to give it to an expensive custom bike.
Yeah,
but
I heard.
But just the qualities I was looking for, and the bikes I rode, yours just kind of floated up to the top, despite my urge to not give you guys the award.
Yeah. Well, it was really kind of gratifying. I don't know if that's the right word to win that and to hear you say that, because we try to make the bikes the best they can be, obviously, and a lot of our customers say, "Man, this is the best bike I've ever ridden." They've just spent $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 on it, so they're inclined to think that it's the best thing ever. But for you have no stake in the game,
right,
except for all the money I sent you.
There you go. There's just stacks right here.
Yeah, it's just piling up. But I think what it comes down to, and you didn't ask this question, but I think you were going to, is that the materials that we're using are the best materials, and they're probably on the lighter side compared to production brands where they have to overbuild a little bit so that a larger rider doesn't destroy the thing. We build the bike for a particular person, and it optimizes the ride quality. We tend to use the same tubes on every bike, but if someone's a lot bigger, we'll use the heavier tubes. I know you buy something like a Surly. We all know those are very overbuilt. They're also great bikes, but
right,
they don't have that subtle kind of lively feel that something like one of our bikes has. I think it's just because we're able to optimize the materials a little bit more.
Yeah, that was going to be one of my first questions. Is so given, let's say, two custom builder and a production bike use the same exact geometry numbers, what is the added value and where the differences lie. So it sounds like the materials do make. Would make a significant difference.
Yeah, the materials can make a difference. And the process, we are able to spend a little more time on each step and maybe use a process that would be that maybe isn't the most efficient way to build a bike, but may add to the ride quality and also definitely adds to the aesthetic quality. And I think of the way that we attach our dropouts. We use a traditional slotted tab style dropout with a slotted stay. So the chain stay and the seat stay, we miter a slot into them, and then the dropout slides into it and then is brazed together rather than welded. And the brazing, before Ira and I started Breadwinner, all the bikes we built were brazed entirely, and we love the way a brazed bike looks, but they take a lot more time to build. So we do hang on to the brazing for the dropout. We like the way it looks. It gives a really sculptural quality to that joint. And we also braze the top of the seat stays where they meet the seat tube. It's mostly an aesthetic choice. In the case of the seat tube joint, we have a lower heat than you would get with welding, so a little less distortion in that area. So it makes it slightly stronger. We can make other choices that add to aesthetics or function along the way that maybe wouldn't be practical for a production facility or larger production facility.
So in terms of tube selection and making it appropriate for the weight and the use, how does that discussion go? Do you ask the rider well, how heavy are you? What's the most you're going to put? And what are the things you try to tease out from that initial conversation?
Yeah, well, we have a standard fitting form that there are interview questions, and some of them are body measurements. So the person's weight You know how tall they are and how they're going to ride the bike, what they expect. For most riders, we stick to a standard tube set for each bike because most most cyclists kind of fall in a pretty small range. You know, they tend to be fairly fit. And you know, there is an average height of people in the world. So the tubes that we've chosen for each model, the standard tube sets, work for most people. But if someone's a lot bigger, a lot heavier in particular, you know, we'll bump up usually the diameter of the tube rather than the wall thickness. You get a lot more. Tubes get exponentially stiffer when you increase their diameter. So by bumping up to, say, the next size up, let's say on the B Road or the G Road, we use a 31.8 millimeter down tube. We might bump that up to a 35 millimeter down tube, just to add a little bit of stiffness if somebody's, you know, 250 pounds or something. You know,
right.
It just makes the bike stiffer for that rider, but far stiffer than you would want it for most other riders. So yeah, there is that possibility. For us, we have an idea of what we generally use for each bike. So we start there.
You guys have you know, distinct models, G Road, B Road, Lolo. How much play within those set designs does the customer have?
Quite a lot, and it's actually been more and more. And part of that is because we want to build bikes that are exactly what our riders expect or want, but also because our production process has gotten more refined, we're able to have a little more flexibility. When we started out, we actually, and this is still out there, we started out talking about the bikes as semi-custom, when in reality, immediately after we got into it, they're really custom bikes. And the great thing about the way we're doing our bikes now versus how we used to do our bikes is that we have a design for each bike. That's why we have models. Our Lolo is a really well thought out road bike. The B Road, the G Road, you know, we've gone through the ringer with them. We've done some testing. We've tweaked tire clearance here and there, and you know, optimized the seat stay bend and how we do all those parts of the process, so that we're not reinventing every single bike and starting with a totally blank slate of paper. We have a general idea of what tubes we want. This also helps speed up the process so that it contributes to us not having that long wait list. So, but we do, and I was just pointed out recently by a customer that our website doesn't do a good job of talking about this because it insinuates that the head tube angle and the seat tube angle are locked in, or the bottom bracket drop is locked in.
All right.
They're not. You know, the head tube angle changes all the time. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The head tube angle changes all the time to accommodate toe clearance in particular. It also helps you balance out weight distribution. So yeah, pretty much everything is can be changed. Where we often push back on changes that customers request because we feel that we're the experts, right. And usually we have a good reason for why our chain stays are a certain length. For instance, some people come in and say, oh, you know, I love that bike, but I want the chain stays to be a lot longer. It's like, well, you know, if you do that, you're going to be limited in what size chain rings you can use and your tire clearance and, you know, blah, blah, blah. It's a cascade, and not everyone that requests a shorter chain stay or a different chain stay length understands all the ramifications of making that change. Yeah, we usually can just discuss that say, hey, you know, I understand why you would want to do that, but we do it this way for, you know, blah, blah, blah reason.
Right. So how do you, how do most customers come at you? Do they kind of describe like a feel that they're trying to get with the bike, or do many of them come with like set angles, and like, how do you interpret?
Some people have, you know, even gotten on BikeCAD. You know, the BikeCAD's the bike design program that we use, that most bike builders use these days, and you can get online and use a free version of it. It's really fun. Some people have gone there, you know, and everybody's different. Some people are really into playing around with that stuff. And other people are like, I love that G Road. I want one. So it's
Right.
the full spectrum. Or most people don't dive in that deeply.
Right.
But when they do, we have a discussion. And going back to your first question on what is customizable and what questions do we ask, we do have our standard fitting form. So it's very empirical. It's empirical stuff, and we take that and also have a whole conversation. Like it's basically like an interview where we're talking about what kind of riding you do, if you're a climber, a descender, or you're a little bit of both, or you like riding your road bike on single track, or maybe you're a pure sunny day flat road rider. Those all go into not only how the bike is designed, but how we set it up and what components we end up putting on it as well.
Right. In terms of I'm kind of curious about what the like the head angle, offset, and trail were on the G Road that I tested, because I feel like it had a pretty good balance in the front in terms of something that was stable when on rough stuff, but it didn't feel like you were steering a yacht.
Don't remember the trail off the top of my head. Actually, I could look it up pretty easily. But the stock head tube angle on a G Road is 72.5 degrees, and I know that bike had a standard head tube angle, and I believe it has a 50 millimeter fork rake.
Here's another question. In terms of like front end handling, it seems like there's a lot of things that kind of affect that. Is there like a particular variable or a number someone could lock into and have that predict how the front end's gonna ride? Is trail like the ultimate kind of, I don't know, descriptor?
Yeah, trail. I think trail is the best descriptor for. It's the best number that will tell you how a bike's going to handle. Of course, it's a product of a bunch of other things. You could slack your bike way out and put a huge amount of rake on the fork and get the same trail number as a steep bike with very little rake.
Right.
So, and they're obviously going to handle a lot differently.
Right.
But given the range that we work within for a head tube angle, for instance, where you've got, between a cross bike, the slackest cross bike and the steepest road bike, we're talking like a 3-degree difference. So we're in a pretty tight range there. But yeah, the distance the contact is, the distance the contact patch is behind the steering axis is your trail, and that is, I think, the best descriptor of how the bike's going to feel through the handlebars.
So what's let's kind of assign like a number range to like a feeling. Like what would be like a stable? What's a trail number for a bike that would be really lively and one that's kind of super stable?
So the G Road is 58. Just looked it up. That's our standard trail figure. Obviously that's going to change if we tweak the head tube angle, but that's fairly typical of most like cross or gravel bikes. Road bikes are going to be pretty close to that. Actually, let me pull up. Curious what a Lolo is about 51.
Okay.
Mountain bikes will go into the 80 to 100 for a more slack.
So generally, the higher the trail number, the more stable it is. It's going to be at speed.
Right. And the more effort it will take to turn the handlebars.
Okay.
So, a mountain bike with that much trail, your handlebars are, 24 inches wide. Right. So, or more. You've got more leverage. On a bike, Jan Hein at Bicycle Quarterly sparked a lot of this discussion about trail 15 years ago. And he started talking about it in the context of having a handlebar bag for randonneuring, and that's a really good example on a bike that does have a front load, either whether it's panniers or cargo cages or handlebar bag. Or in the case of our city bike, the Arbor Lodge, that big Portour rack, the big flat rack. If you put weight on the front of a bike, it makes it harder to steer. So if you make the trail smaller, it makes it steer more easily. So you can change the steering geometry so that it handles better with a load on it. But if you take the load off of that same bike, it's not going to handle well. So you've got to walk that fine line.
Yeah, so. I think like the way I like to think about, or the way that finally made sense to me was actually the Brompton. You know, it's like it's night and day when you put like the big front-loading touring back. It totally mellows out the steering, but without it, it's like a squirrel or a dog chasing a squirrel.
Right, and it's probably more pronounced on that with the small wheels.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, this is like a perfect like magnification of what Jan's been talking about.
Yeah.
So is it?
And it's interesting. He thinks for a round and touring bike with like a bag that might have, 8 pounds in it, that you should have trail in the 30 to 35 millimeter range. I can't stand riding a bike like that. Yeah. So, there's personal preference that plays into it too. I used to build a lot of round and touring bikes, and I tried that super low trail. I didn't like it. For that kind of a bike, I like closer to 40, 43, 45, somewhere in there. I just like the way the bike feels. I have just like the steering feel of it better. So
yeah.
So there's personal preference that plays into it as well.
Is it possible to have a bike with two different forks and have one for like, okay, daily non-front loaded riding and one that's a little bit more adjusted for front load? Or is that just like the cascading effect where for it to do it well, other things would have to change?
No, it could be done. You would have to, they'd have to be different lengths to keep the head tube at the same angle, unless you were trying to change the head tube angle. In the past, I've built some mountain bikes. The best example I can think of where it was built for a suspension fork, but then we would also set it up with a rigid fork where it would change the head tube angle. But then we'd accommodate that with the rake change as well, and you could get it optimized. So that's not something I don't think we've ever done that with a Breadwinner.
Right.
The question sometimes is, hey, this is like after someone's already gotten a bike, hey, if I put this other fork on it, what's going to happen? and we have the ability to tell them. But yeah, that would be possible. It would take, it would just take some plugging the numbers in and
right.
How it all blends.
Yeah, it's actually one of the arguments I've heard for a custom bike is that most production bikes, when they make the fork, they don't adjust the offset for each size. So there's kind of a play and a compromise between, smaller sizes and larger sizes. They get the same fork offset, so then to compensate, they adjust the head angle and everything. Right,
and we sell a lot of bikes with carbon forks that you have a couple of rake options. We can do that, but most you're kind of stuck with changing
right.
the. So,
yeah,
they still ride well.
Yeah, so I guess I feel like the biggest challenges of creating a custom bike is setting expectations. So how do you do that? Like, how do you, just, at the end of the day, it's still a bike. You want to make you the best bike, but, it's not going to, turn you into Lance or whatever.
Yeah, people are fairly realistic. Our riders come to us based on our reputation and, what they've heard about the bikes from folks like yourself or other friends that they might have that have the bikes. They don't get to test ride them, which I've always been super grateful of the leap of faith that people take to get to do that. Mm-hmm. But the idea, I guess, kind of goes back to having different bike models is, hey, that bike is optimized for this purpose, or it's optimized for that purpose, plus or minus what you want to do with it. And whatever tweaks we've made so that it's a better bike packing bike than a road bike or whatever it is. The idea is to optimize the design for however it's going to be used. And that's what we're good at. So,
right.
The promise is that it will meet the expectations. I can't really think of a. Actually, yeah, we actually had someone yesterday ask us if we built a single speed gravel bike that they could also shred the track on.
It's a lot to ask.
It's like, yeah, I'm not exactly sure what shredding the track is.
Right.
And no.
Yeah.
So, sometimes people want their bikes to do too much. I think that it's funny that happened yesterday, but we a lot of times we'll get questions about, would my mountain bike be a good cyclocross bike?
Right.
And I'm sure you could race cyclocross on it and have fun, but it's not ideal. You have that conversation, or the gravel bike versus the touring bike, or
mm-hmm.
like the road touring bike, or can I use my road bike for commuting? Obviously, yes, you can, but we don't want to try to make it do too much, or it's going to compromise too much in all directions. So
right. I have one more like kind of bike nerdy question, and then we'll move to the Instagram questions. Bottom bracket drop. Like, how does that ultimately affect the ride, and where have you settled for like a road bike versus like a gravel bike?
Ira and I think I prefer a lower bottom bracket drop than maybe Ira does. So we kind of meet in the middle a little bit there. I really love the feeling. I'm more of a descender, and Ira's more of a climber. Mm-hmm. So we balance each other out there. I really love the feel of a lower bottom bracket when I'm descending. It just lowers your center of gravity a little bit. I feel like I'm down in the bike a little bit more, and I love the way that feels. Ira pointed out though that a lower bottom bracket, you have to swing the bike around the axis more when you're climbing and you're kind of rocking the bike. Like it turns into more pendulum. I guess you're not actually pivoting the bike on the axle axis. You're pivoting on the contact patch. But his thinking is that, and his experience, he's played with this more than I have. I've never thought about bottom bracket drop in relation to how a bike climbs, but mm-hmm. that he's like, a bike with a little higher bottom bracket climbs better. And
interesting. Because it oscillates less, like there's like less like effective.
That's the idea. That's the idea. And I'm now, as I'm saying it, I'm like, is that actually right? But that's his belief, and so he likes it a little bit higher, but not a lot. So I think our road bikes, like the lows around 70. Mm-hmm. I believe that the B Road is at 63. Mm-hmm. And the G Road is also, the G Road's the same. So it's also 63. And then, mountain bikes are in I think around 40 or something. Yeah. The cross bike is 5 millimeters higher than the B. The whole shot's 5 millimeters higher than the B Road, just to give you a little more pedal clearance. But I think on balance, our bottom brackets tend to be on the low side. Yeah. And production bikes, I think, tend to be a little bit higher, just to add in a little margin of error for people doing pedal strike and whatnot.
Right.
I know my personal road bike that I've had now for 10, 12 years, that has a 80 millimeter bottom bracket drop. And that bike descends so well on a twisty paved road. It's super fun to descend on. So, but yeah, I guess that's
cool. All right. Well, let's move on to some Instagram questions. I think Graham Bikes asks, what would you tell your younger self?
That's a good question, because I remember when I started building bikes, and I guess that's what I'm going to call my younger self. I guess if we go back before that, I wish that I had started earlier. Having taught at UBI for a while and met a lot of aspiring frame builders, and having gone through it myself and heard all those warnings as well. I remember the first NABs I went to, I met all these famous frame builders. Yeah. I couldn't believe I was actually talking to these people, and a lot of them said,
"Just don't do it.
Don't do it. Do it." I won't name any names, but even one of my suppliers said, "Don't do it. Don't do it." So and so got divorced because of it. And I was like, "No, that's not true." But anyway.
That's how I feel like when
Yeah,
people ask me about starting a YouTube channel.
yeah. Yeah, well, owning your own business is hard, and you need to be prepared for that. And to go to your question, that's the best thing you can do is have a good business education.
Right.
I have a degree, I have a liberal arts degree in economics, and that is no preparation for owning a business. Um, I for a long time I regretted that I got that degree and wished that I'd gone more into engineering or something like that, which I think would have been a great career track for myself. But in my current role, I wish that I had a business degree.
All right.
So, and we can always look back, and hindsight is great. But yeah, running business is hard. It's the thing that we struggle with the most. I got into this to build bikes. Most bike builders get into this because they like to build bikes. And I remember saying things like, "Yeah, I don't need to make very much money." And when you're 30 or 25, that is true, but inevitably it changes. You have to make money, and you have to be in business to make money, or it's not going to work. You're
Right.
going to have to do something else. So that's it's no secret that Breadwinner is called Breadwinner partially for that reason.
Right.
It was an inside joke before it was actually our brand name, and but the truth of the matter is that we like the way it sounds as a brand name, but we also this is version 2.0, and we need to make money. So we're trying to figure out a way to do the thing that we love, which is making bikes, and still make a living and have financial security and employ other people and pay them a fair wage and all that. So yeah, business fundamentals.
Yeah, we're kind of in the same boat. We started, our stuff just because we love bikes and sharing content, and it got to the point where it's like, well, we have to make a living out of this too, so people can continue to enjoy the content. So looking at the business aspect. Ian Tellenside asks, lots of people doing stainless steel. Do you guys have any opinions? Downsides to XCR, which I'm assuming is a type of tubing, or 953 for an entire bike?
I've never built a stainless bike. Ira's done a couple. The drawbacks to stainless are that there aren't as many tubes to choose from.
Mm-hmm.
So optimizing the butt lengths and the tube diameters for each design is more difficult. Cost is definitely something to. I don't see the benefits outweighing the disadvantages so much. Corrosion resistance is nice, but we don't have a particular problem with our bikes rotting underneath their riders. They last a real long time. We use really high quality paint, so they're protected on the outside, and on the inside of the frame, we treat them with a frame saver, rust inhibitor. That it's something you need to reapply. It does add a little bit of maintenance once a year or so. You should spray some rust inhibitor inside your steel frame. Something you can do when you're doing your yearly overhaul is something else you should also do. And people don't do either of those things, and the bikes still don't fall apart. So,
right.
We've had a couple of bikes come back this year with some rust under the paint, and we just warranty repainted them. I think that was something happened in the paint process. And now that we've built 500 frames, we are seeing more warranty stuff. There's just more of them out there. And two just happened to come back in the last few months. Our painter stood behind his work, and he repainted them free of charge. So not a problem. And it was surfacey stuff anyway.
Eto Thymer, I think he owns two Breadwinners.
Oh, cool.
He asks, what is your least favorite part of building a frame?
The facing, chasing, reaming step at the end, like we call the prep.
Kind of like the mechanical task. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like you have cutting oil, and you're like turning these tools, and we do it all manually. We need to automate some of that stuff, or use power tools for some of it, but we still do it manually. And yeah, that is definitely my least favorite part of the whole thing.
Yeah. He also asks, is there a current trend in cycling that you would like to see go away or to stay?
I hope that the the gravel and adventure stuff keeps going. I love it. I love that style of bike. When before that became really popular, and when Ira and I were riding for the Rafa Continental crew, we were doing that kind of stuff on our 25 millimeter tires. And I remember back then thinking, this is the dumbest bike to be doing this on, but it was so fun. And then, now that we've got bikes that are actually made for that, I love it. You hear people say stuff like I just did, like, oh, we've been doing that for years. It's like, yeah, but this is a better bike for that. And, it's been fun. I think for us, we get to build more unique bikes that are really, within the niche of gravel / adventure, all road riding. People are doing all different kinds of things. So it's a great space for the custom bike, because we can add this braze on or that braze on, or tweak the geometry here, or add frame packs, or, do all those fun things that you'll never get out of a production bike.
Yeah.
So it's a good little world for us. I would love it if people rode more hardtail mountain bikes. That's where I'd like to see some growth. I love riding my Goodwater, and I've pretty much always ridden hardtail mountain bikes. That's what I started out building. I've been mountain biking since the 80s, and that's just like, that's where my heart really is. So we build. Now that the year has ended, I should look and see how many we did last year. We probably did 15 or so Goodwaters, which is, actually that's generous. We did less than that. We maybe did 12. I would love to do a lot more of those.
So this is a question from Sklar. He said, what are your favorite trail snacks?
Sour Patch Kids, of course. And I got turned on to them because my son likes them, and we were out mountain biking. So I go to Montana, and there were 12 of us there, I think, from all over the place, and everybody was into them. It was really funny. So yeah, Sour Patch Kids.
It's like the La Croix of mountain biking.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened, but I also like real food. So I carry sandwiches. I like making pancakes before rides, and I'll usually put peanut butter on them, and like pancakes with peanut butter, or the only bars I really eat are like Kind bars, like that are made out of actual things that look like food. So
yeah. Well, one last question. I'm curious, like what's the most popular color that goes out your door? Is it something boring like black?
We've noticed over the years that we'll usually have 6 to 12 frames kind of hanging up that are post paint, waiting for shipping or assembly or whatever. And for whatever reason, you see them come in waves. Like right now, we've got a bunch of gray frames. Maybe it's midwinter and people decided they wanted gray. You'd think maybe it'd be the opposite, but then the next wave will be blue, and then you'll see red. And I don't know why that happens. Our most popular color might actually be gray. But we do a lot of blues. We do several blues. Our there's the light Breadwinner blue that's one of our stock colors. So we have 9 stock colors. Yeah, I know. Talking to our friends at Chris King, we've discussed this in the past too. They make all those anodized colors,
right,
and they sell black and silver mostly.
Right. Well, cool. Well, thanks for spending the morning on the channel. Hopefully, and if we get enough questions, or if you're up to doing this again.
Yeah, you're welcome.
See the response.
I enjoy it. It's fun.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you, Tony. And if you let me know what you guys think of the video. If you guys have any questions for Tony, maybe if we get enough, we'll sit down again, or get Ira in the mix as well.
Yeah.
And,
yeah. I talked with Ira earlier, and he was like, "What about me?" So yeah, maybe you should have one with Ira.
Yeah. Cool. That's a good idea. All right. Well, thank you.